I picked up this gun and they're like, all right, I got to clear it. So I racked the slide and I saw there was a round in the chamber, but it was just there in the chamber. And I went, oh yeah, this thing doesn't have an extractor, and reached down and pushed the lever and launched a 25 auto like across the room. Wow.
Oh man, we got a bunch of people that sent us in stuff for the did we talk about the LCP 22 long rifle last show? The LCP 2? Yes, we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hawthorne bush removal. Robert also wrote in something else. Hello, everybody. We got 4 viewers already. We're going to have a hell of a show here. Just throwing a few things up. You fellas ready?
I'm ready to go.
Yep.
I know Daniel's ready to go.
I hope so.
I'm looking at these show notes. All right, hello and welcome to Handgun Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Machad from the wild woods of Central Maine, and this is your home for all the news, information, and discussion in the handgunning world. This week, we're joined by Daniel Waters to discuss Magnum Automatics. As always, Handgun Radio is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network, and please check out the Patriot Patch Company for their awesome patches and other high-quality items. Visit patriotpatch.co for more information. And like always, every month, whenever I've gotten these, they have these awesome and cool. That's really cool. Jeez.
Cool and awesome.
I'm not using that word anymore.
Are they awesome?
These really awesome artist-proof renditions that come on a like postcard type material, showing the way that the latest patch of the month was designed. So be sure to check those out. They're really awesome and cool. And shop Amazon using our affiliate link at firearmsradio.tv/Amazon. And please help support Handgun Radio. Head over to firearmsradio.tv/pledge and click on HGR. A bunch of different pledge levels over there, and we really appreciate it. So, Daniel.
Yep. You
have written quite the extensive show notes, as always, and
we
all thank you for it.
Quite welcome.
How have you been, and what did you do this week?
Just hanging in there. One of the things with the new apartment is that the AC, the complex doesn't have like a central system or like a dedicated outside compressor. So it's basically a repurposed window unit. Hopefully it won't light off during the show, but man, that thing sounds like a jet engine going off.
No, that's okay. I got the guy testing the truck next door to me, so we're all set.
Yeah. No, just been a regular old week. Did everybody see that CNN article on the SIG P320?
I did not.
I saw it. I actually didn't get a chance to read it.
Yeah, it actually lists some additional accidents beside the incident back in January of 2017. So evidently there have actually been some officers that have injured themselves this year. And there was just one of them had just filed a new lawsuit against SIG. And I think the third one is basically waiting on his department's internal review board.
Due to the malfunction like that they had to fix?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if it wasn't that, I'm going to say how many times have we heard them shooting themselves with Glocks and every other gun?
Well, with at least one of the incidents, it was a holstered pistol.
Okay.
They actually found the case inside the chamber, inside the holster.
Wow,
man.
Yeah.
So he was like standing up or something, and it whacked it on the back of the slide.
Well, he was a SWAT officer with Orlando PD, and evidently he was at home at the time, and there was a SWAT call out, and so he was gathering up all his gear so he could go out to the car and get geared up and head off to the call out, and evidently he dropped his duty rig. Yeah, caught around underneath his kneecap.
How do you screw not him, but like SIG? How do you screw that up that bad? Because I mean, this hurts me because like one of the first semi-automatics, I remember my dad telling me about. He had a Sig Sauer, and I always thought he was saying 6 hour when I was 10. And then I finally like saw it, and that was just like that was the the semi-auto that I measured everything else up to, that and the H&K USP that he carried, because I really didn't have any experience with anything else. And then once I, broadened my horizons, but still, I have that SIG, and it's functioned flawlessly. It's never jammed on me. I mean, hell, I'm still using the same magazines that he had with it back when he was carrying it as a duty pistol, and they still work great.
I am madly in love with the 220X series. Like, they're not a perfect gun in any way, shape, or form, and all that. But geez, every time I shoot one, I always am just so pleased with how they function and just how elegant they are.
Daniel, is there a specific reason that everybody says, because mine is stamped P226 made in W Germany? Everybody says that's the best one to have. Is there a specific reason for that? Isn't it because the slides are milled as opposed to stamped or something?
No, most your West German builds are going to be stamped.
Okay.
But again, that's how it was originally designed. Going back,
you could tell real quick. Just look at the breech block. Just look down. Look down at the top of the slide, and you'll see that there's a seam right there at the breech face where the rolled sheet metal had the breech block inserted. And actually, if you look in the front, there's kind of a barrel bushing that's in there too. But I only realized that recently when watching a video. I think it was the Forgotten Weapons, where he talked about all the different SIGs, and I actually realized, oh my God, yeah, there is one there. The breech block part is just painfully obvious in all of them, but the quality of which the bushing or muzzle cap or whatever you want to call it is added to the front of the slide is so good that, like, unless you're looking for it, you're not going to see it.
Right. I really like the sights on it too. People kind of rag on the sights, but I mean, the lollipop thing has always worked for me.
Actually, didn't Ian have a video on that as well? The von Steenhagen sight?
I don't think I've seen that. He might have. I might have just missed it.
It very well might have. I haven't seen that one either.
That, or maybe he explained it inside the SIG video.
That's the one with the vertical line on the back and then the ball on the front.
Yeah, matter of fact, I think that was actually designed first for Walther. Or at least that concept was designed for Walther.
Well, it's one of the least offensive sights I've ever used.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, a lot of sites, they're too busy.
Right.
And that's why a lot of the pros either recommend black on black, or if you have to have something, have it front sight only.
Aside from my Steyr sights, I just like a nice black sight with a fairly wide notch and a nice big, preferably tritium front dot in the front sight.
Now, what I really liked was I liked having a deep notch.
So a really tall sight with a deep notch down the middle?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily, it didn't necessarily have to be tall. I just wanted that notch deep, so it just kind of floated that whole front sight. I know there were other people that said they prefer that as well. I don't know, it just seems kind of crowded when the notch is shallow. And you're
I can see that. You also get a little less play in it. That's why I like shooting suppressor sights, even if it's on an unsuppressed gun, because you get a little bit more room to play with the sight and really get it lined up well.
What do you have on your 1911 SC? Weird.
They both that's Novak 3 dots.
Oh, okay. That's
just factory Smith & Wesson. They all ship them with Novak 3 dots, and that's really my preferred sight picture, because that's really where. I mean, that's my first pistol was that my stainless steel 5-inch Smith & Wesson 1911. So Novak 3 dots is what sights look like to me. Yeah. So I've never found them to be too busy or too hard to get through. It's just my eyes pick up the dots and line them up. And I've even, after I've heard people talk about, oh yeah, well, you got to get like have it, green in the front and red in the rear or things like that. So you don't get them confused. I've tried to make the dots line up in any order but front sight in the middle. Yeah. And you can't do it.
I just want to know where my muzzle is. I mean, the rear, the back of, yeah. The back's going to follow the front. I mean,
yeah, I've never understood how people could mix up the 3 dots, because
Wasn't it Hickok or whatever that said just have the front sight, because just put your front sight wherever you want to hit and that's where it's going to be, or something like that?
Yeah, you can do a lot with that. Then again, I remember when I was testing the 38 Super I built that's in my avatar icon, and I didn't have access to the swage die because I'd used a tenon front sight as opposed to a dovetail, and a friend was trying to find his so he could loan it to me to use. And so for the initial function testing, I was shooting with a rear sight but no front sight. I was just kind of using the notch for the front sight and the slide as a rough index.
Mm-hmm. You'll get you on paper.
Yeah. Oh, it got me more than on paper. It actually worked pretty well out to at least 10 yards. But
Nice. You just decided to leave it.
It's good enough.
Yeah, there's an old comic in one of the American Handgunners. It was guys telling a shooter to watch the front sight, and about that point the front sight's come off and it's like flipping over the guy's shoulder, and he's like looking over his shoulder, following the front sight. But yeah, that was pretty epidemic in the days.
Had that happened to me once on the range with a Walther P22.
Sure, it wasn't the slide.
No, it was the slide. The slide did not break there. The front sight just, I didn't even know where it went. I had just been shooting it, and then I handed it to somebody else, and the front sight was on the gun when they took their first shot. But by the time the slide locked back, the front sight was not there anymore.
I'll probably get some haters for this, but Ruger fixed that with the SR-22.
I dare you to write it and hate that. The Walther P22 is a terrible gun.
So weird. What did you do this week?
I have had house guests, like nothing but house guests, like house guests upon house guests upon house guests. That my third floor guest quarters have been getting used heavily, and so there have been a lot of people in my house.
So
and
why aren't you up there cleaning them instead of being on the show with us?
Did you not? Were you not hearing my dryer running in the background? my second load of sheets just finished, so I will. I'll be making the bets tomorrow because I'll be too tired when we're done this. But that is my super duper exciting life. Though I was having a very, very interesting discussion with my sister-in-law, who is she's about as left. She's a reformed hippie, and very much like, not rah-rah sis boom bah Second Amendment, but definitely on the getting away from her anti-Second Amendment views that she might have had a long, long time ago. So that's always good to have that with, it's not just libertarians and conservatives that are Second Amendment people.
Yeah, that's something I think we lose sight of. We kind of get that whole us versus them enemy mentality, and there are some people who are still firearms enthusiasts. They may just not support other causes that we care about, but they may be Second Amendment supporters.
Absolutely.
So, drink segment, and then we have listener email about your drink segment after.
Yes.
Sorry, wait a minute. Hold on. My week in review. I've been working on a picket fence in my backyard and getting the house summer ready, putting the pool together, getting stuff going.
What'd you find in the pool?
I found a dead squirrel in the pool today. Yeah, that was nice. I called my wife out and I said, "Hey, Sarah, come out and watch me check this out." She goes, "What is that?" And I'm like, pulled it out. And she goes, "Oh my God, is that a cat?" I was like, "No, that's a squirrel." And she's like, "Oh, I was about to get really sad."
Nope, it's a tree rat.
So yeah, I don't know what the poor little guy was doing, but definitely probably found it was not too hospitable under there.
I was looking at the pictures of your backyard. You don't have any trees overhanging it. Like I thought maybe it was something like more often than you would think. Squirrels jumping from branch to branch, they sometimes get it wrong. And I've actually the last time I saw it happen was in Mount Vernon in Virginia. And it was right in front of a whole bunch of Catholic schoolgirls. And a squirrel jumped from branch to branch, grabbed a dead one, and then fell. Must have been easily 20 feet to his death right in front of him. And that was an interesting moment.
Yeah, I think he crawled up under there before I took the cover off. I think that he thought like it was a habitat or something.
Hey, he might have been looking for a place to hide up, and then slipped into the water and then wasn't able to get out. But judging from what you showed me and the fact that you said that he wasn't all like, limp like a rag doll, he probably was fairly fresh. So you could have eaten him.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm good. Good Lord. You live in Massachusetts. You still haven't shaken the mane off you.
I'm never going to shake the mane off me, brother.
So what's the drink segment this week?
All right. So it's really more, I'm drinking right now an experiment, but let's start from the beginning.
Yesterday was National Gin Day.
Was it National Gin Day?
It certainly was, my friend.
Oh, man. Oh, well, I guess it's okay that I missed that.
This is appropriate.
I could have caused myself some serious problems celebrating. I'm celebrating. But there's a drink called the Gin Cup. Worst name for a cocktail ever. I think I found this exact same drink in another cocktail book with a better name, but
reminds me of that terrible movie with Kevin Costner.
Oh, Tin Cup. I only saw bits and pieces of it. Was it bad?
Renee Russo was in it. You tell me.
I really liked her in Get Shorty. And what was that? That was Lethal Weapon 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some hate mail. She was in 2 also. Russo fan club.
No, Lethal Weapon 3, which is my favorite Lethal Weapon because that was the super anti-gun one. Hilarious. But yeah, so a gin cup is 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of lime juice, ½ ounce of simple syrup, and then you muddle it with mint. And so so it's got that mint gin and all that. I don't like it with the lemon as much, and I just wrote everything wrong in the show notes here. Lemon.
Jack Lemon?
Yes. But so I've tried it with the I tried it with lime juice, especially since when you're using Tanqueray pairs so much better with lime because it's made with lime peels. And I think that's a whole lot better. So give that a try, especially if you got a bottle of Tanqueray on hand. But I realized that, you know what, if you took the gin and substituted gin for rum, and instead of pouring it into a cocktail glass, you instead poured it into a Collins glass and topped it off with soda, that's a mojito. And I said, well, what happens if you don't top it off with soda? What if you just keep it in the cocktail glass? And so I'm drinking it with the rum. It's a perfectly acceptable drink, but it's not as good as with the gin. I think the gin definitely takes it up over the edge. So if you're a big rum fan and you've got mint growing in your garden like I do, absolutely give it a try. But otherwise, I'd go for the gin.
Nice. So we have some listener email. Excuse me. And this one is for Weird. You ready for this, Weird?
Yes. And this is from Oddball. So
yeah.
So this is somebody I know.
Oh, you know? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of figured that you did. Just finished listening to episode 203, where among other things, you guys discussed the Beretta 21A Bobcat. You guys missed a key feature. Unloading the gun is fun. I found with mine that if I hit the lever to cause the barrel to tip up and I don't have a finger in the way, the spring tension causes the barrel to flip up with enough force that the chambered round gets flung out and goes sailing downrange. That is true.
Yeah, I was just for those that are listening to us on YouTube, I was talking about that just as we went live, but I ended up having to clear the first time I ever handled a Beretta 21A was one that had been left in an apartment of a friend of mine who was in the hospital at the time, and his daughter wanted me just to clear out the guns just to make sure everything was safe. And I pressed I picked up the gun and I racked the slide and I saw the head of the loaded round in the chamber and went, oh, but it's still in there. I think I might have racked it a couple of times before I realized, oh yeah, this is a gun that doesn't have an extractor. So looked around, saw the little lever on the side of it. That's the only other button to push. So here, push this button and sent a 25 across the room. And yeah, so it definitely gave it some distance too. Like I had to hunt for that thing to find it.
I joked before. I said if I ever have a dud round with that gun, I'm just going to flip the barrel and that'll hit him.
Yep. But I've never actually tried it with my 22 because I don't want to ever do that. So I've always got the finger in the way so it doesn't go launching.
Then he also said, I do have a complaint with the drink segment. The aviation sounded tasty, so I decided to buy the ingredients and try it. Unfortunately, I've discovered that the cap on the Luxardo bottle is sharp enough that if you aren't paying attention and pinch your finger in between the cap and the bottle, it will quickly give you a nasty cut on your fingertip when closing the bottle. I believe the only solution to this is to demand Weird make my cocktails the next time we meet. Keep up the good work, Oddball.
I might have, last time we were hanging out, I might have made him a Manhattan that was way too strong for him. But yeah, the Luxardo, like a lot of liquor bottles, has that little, like, it's not foil, it's just like super duper thin, like aluminum. And so, and it's got that little like tamper proof ring. And yeah, once you pop that off, that sucker is razor sharp. And so, yeah, you could definitely slice yourself open bad. But I hope after the bleeding stopped, you enjoyed your aviation, Oddball. I haven't had a chance to talk to you in a little bit, so we'll be talking about that later.
And then finally, we had some responses to our plea for hawthorn bush removal. One person said the X18 flamethrower looks like a promising solution. Might as well have a little fun with it. I did think of that, but it's way too close to a fence.
You could write it off on your taxes too.
I already have to replace part of the other part of the fence, and I don't want to have to replace that part. And then if you're talking, and then Robert said, if you're talking about killing a bush, glyphosates, such as Roundup, should be a systemic killer. It inhibits amino acid synthesis, starving the plant of necessary building blocks. Copper nails also kill the whole plant.
Oh, by the way, for the Roundup, the key thing is it does that in the chlorophyll. So that's one of the nice things about Roundup. Like my uncle, a whole bunch of my family up in northern Maine are potato farmers, and they love Roundup. I don't even know if they have it, if they were using it before Monsanto came out with the Roundup resistant strains. Because now you've got strains that are genetically modified to resist, the glyphosate or whatever it's called. That's actually the first time I've ever heard that term. So you could just spray Roundup all over everything and you're fine. But the key thing is, what you could do is, before your plants start coming up and start producing chlorophyll, you could spray down. So you could like spray your garden down with the stuff, after you've planted your seeds, and it'll kill all the weeds in the garden, but then your plants will come up just fine. So the key is you got to make sure it's in full leaf and then spray it down. But I'm not a huge fan of Roundup. Like, I used to buy it to get the weeds out of my sidewalk cracks. And I found, quite literally, I won't lie, there might have been some Pabst Blue Ribbons involved, but I said, it's a better solution is just to get a blowtorch and just burn them all up. And I realized that, when you burn them all up with the blowtorch, the weeds go away and they don't come back, because the root system the dead root system keeps the new weeds from sprouting. So, but again, that's the X18 technique.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to do that, it's about 2 feet away from a fence.
Can you get down? Is it how low are the lowest branches to the ground? Because when
all the way down.
Go to Home Depot, pay $12 for a machete, and just hack away at it for a little bit until you can clear away to the trunk, and then just take a saw to the bottom of the trunk, and then gone she goes. Throw it in the fire pit.
I need to wear a bomb suit to get into this thing. All right, so with that, we'll head into the main topic: Magmatics, the Magnum semi-auto pistols. So, Daniel, you have a couple things here written about Magnum automatic pistols.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple.
Yeah, a few.
We talked about this. I'm trying to remember. It was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, at least.
Well, actually, it was a couple of years ago that we first mentioned it. I think you were trying to get Nathaniel F. on.
Oh, yes.
And so that planted the seed in the back of my head. But yeah, I've been dropping hints ever since. But you finally picked up on it.
Well, here we are. I think Weird was the one who, yes, we need to do that.
That's so much. I love this subject matter.
So, basically, how do you have it laid out here before we get started? So, like the early stuff and.
Well, basically, I'm trying to do a chronology of sorts, listing the pistol, manufacturer, inventor, have little sections in the notes about how it operates. Also give a little rundown of what it was chambered for. And there obviously will be some that you'll recognize because they're still on the market today. Some that are mentioned quite often, either in fiction or video games. I know Ian's been kind of on a tear in recent months with videos on some of these that have turned up at auction. So
yeah, didn't he get a ding for the LAR Grizzly video?
I think he did. I can't remember why, but
What, like, is it a YouTube strike?
Yeah, he got a YouTube strike. It was that the LAR Grizzly video got his channel like suspended, or he got a YouTube strike or something on Christmas Day.
What?
Yeah.
Oh God, YouTube.
Well, Brownells got pulled down yesterday or the day before.
I just saw that.
And then a few other people have had their streaming rights suspended.
Bloke on the Range is gone as well.
Yep.
He's still working for TFB, but his channel's gone.
And he was like the least offensive.
Yeah, he's British, and like he has to fly to Switzerland to do his range videos.
actually, I think
he lives in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Oh, does he live in Switzerland?
Yeah,
okay.
he's on Facebook. Follow him on Facebook.
I don't do Facebook very well. I'm
Yes,
just
you do.
I'm just learning. You think I do well?
Yeah, you're in your group.
Yeah, well, I am in my group. That's why I'm on Facebook. I mean, your group as well.
We forced you into the collective. You will
did.
be assimilated.
It's all your fault.
Locutus. Such a nerd reference. But anyways, sorry we interrupted you, Daniel. So you start off here with a gun that I'm actually very familiar with, and not many people have actually handled one aside from Ian and a few others.
Well, that's
I'm
because
sure.
there's only about 80 of them in existence. So
yeah, the Gabbett Fairfax Mars. I can use the picture of me holding the one at Julia for this show.
Yeah, you have one of the later ones, more of the common version.
Yeah. And it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And actually, his prototypes kind of went from huge to smaller to back to huge. And it's very, very odd. I don't think most people realize that his initial patents going back to 1895 have a forward-mounted rotary magazine.
Weird.
And it's actually, at least in the patent drawings, it looks like he's chambered it for a revolver cartridge.
Wow.
The guns are very strange. I mean, when you hold them, the grip, there's so much top heaviness to it. It almost feels like the grip is further forward than it actually is, and it feels like there's a huge amount of weight over the back end because, of course, that's where most of the action is. I mean, you have because it uses what they used to call the Maxim style action, right? Where you pull the round out of the magazine, and now you see it in the Boberg. Pull it out of the magazine backwards and then bring it up and forward.
Well, again, a lot of that, at least with the Maxim and several of the belt-fed machine guns, a lot of that was because no one had figured out how to make a machine gun belt that you could push a rimmed cartridge through, and most militaries were using rimmed cartridges at the time, or at least when those a lot of the designs first came out. But yeah, the fourth patent I list there actually shows some high capacity variants. It's very, very odd, almost like a conveyor belt. I don't know how you'd actually reload it quickly, but yeah, it's quite eccentric. You see some of the things that he would use in later designs. It looks like he's already using a rotating bolt. He's already using a long recoil action.
Well, I remember when I was talking with Ian about it, that little claw system that pulls the round out and goes up, they ended up having a thing where if you held the trigger back, the slide would stay open because the violence of the whole action operating caused the rounds to misfeed because they were bouncing around so much. I mean, the gun was crazy for the time, especially.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
Not necessarily for the time, because at this, I mean, this is really still the infancy of the semi-auto pistols. So at this point in time, like people are still throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick.
Well, yeah, but everybody's doing 32s and 380s and weird 9mm Steyrs and Glicenti and everything else. I mean, we're talking like 10mm in 1900,
Mm-hmm.
if not more.
Well, the thing is, I mean, the Mars rounds were more powerful than really any of the standard revolver cartridges of the day.
Oh, far more powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like you listed here in the show notes. You're looking at 100. Which one was the worst, or not the worst, but the most powerful? The 360 Mars or the 10mm? Was it the 10mm Mars too?
The 10mm was pretty short lived. I think the ones that ended up in the most military trials was probably the 450 long.
216 to 250 grains at 1250.
Yeah, the cartridge is
Good Lord.
as big or not bigger than a 45 Win Mag.
What's the FPS on a 454 Casull?
454 could get close to 2,000 with a 230, or at least that was the original goal.
So this is a little bit below a 454.
Well, it's a lot below, but it's still, yeah, it's
still 454 is kind of a freak. So
yeah,
that's not a thing like.
Still, 250 grains, that's a big bullet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're looking at like 445 Colt weight.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely Magnum level.
Or yeah, 44 Magnum, rather. Sorry, not 45 Colt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on par with some nice 44 Magnum loads. And it's out of a semi-auto. I mean, what year was this one around?
Let's see. The first of the big bores came out about 1899.
So not even 20th century.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, the first ones were the 360. Matter of fact, it was a prototype that was first submitted to Webley Scott Revolver and Arms Company back in 1898, and that could do anywhere from like right around 140, 150 grains at anywhere from like 1,500 to 1,700 feet per second. I mean, that's pretty crazy powerful in and of itself. That's pretty close to 357 Magnum territory, if not more powerful. The neat thing about the ones he submitted to Webley and Scott was, instead of pulling the round back out of the magazine, the way the action was set up, he was trying, I'm guessing he was trying to limit how much it actually recoiled over the hand at the time. So instead of the bolt picking up the round directly from the magazine, there's a lever in the action that pushes the round forward onto a feed tray. So then the bolt can pick it up and put it in the chamber.
Interesting.
That's visible inside the patents. And again, that almost kind of sort of looks, if you squint at it just right, it's almost Automag-esque. I mean, not truly, because it's a long recoil and the weird feed system, but that almost looks conventional compared to what they ended up with producing in 1900, which is really when you first have the sort of a settled design. When I mentioned Webley and Scott having made prototype pistols in 99, basically they only made 12 at that point. And essentially those were getting passed around as samples, trying to gather interest either for military trials, potential customers, etc. At the time, they were offering them in 8.5, 9mm, 360, and evidently those are two separate cartridges, varying in basically case configuration. There was a 10mm and the 450 long. 10mm was very close to actually what we would consider a modern 10mm. Somewhere in like the 160 to 175 grains at 1,300 feet per second. So nothing to sneeze at. Now, Webley's kind of gets wobbly around 1901 and decides, okay, there's probably not a market for this. And evidently, Gabbett Fairfax was getting kind of pernicious. Well, maybe not pernicious is not the word for it, but he's getting particular about how he wanted his design to work and wasn't taking input from other people. And so Gabbett Fairfax gets some investors and forms the Mars Automatic Pistol Syndicate. And at least from 1901 to 1903, they made around 56 pistols. All of the calibers previously mentioned. They eventually dropped the 10 millimeter Mars. They proposed a 472 Mars at one point, but evidently he never follows through on development. There's also a 450 short, which is almost 45 gap sized. And I'm guessing that was in response to the complaints about the 450 long being much too powerful. And you do see some references in trials documents to a cartridge giving velocities in like the high 700 range up to high 900. So I'm guessing that was probably the 450 short. Well, 1903, this is going to be a common story for a lot of these manufacturers. The Mars Automatic Pistol Syndicate goes bankrupt, and so Gabbett Fairfax loses his patent rights to his creditors, and the creditors decide, well, we'll try to continue on without Gabbett Fairfax. And so they take some of the employees of the old company, particularly an inventor by the name of Clement Brown, and they try to tweak the design some more. And I have linked a patent by Brown from 1906. And so they try to produce that for about a year. And well, again, there's no real customers for a pistol that powerful. And it was probably pretty expensive, because it was essentially a bespoke custom pistol. And so production ends in 1907. Now, the next time you see someone try a really outsized automatic pistol is going to be after World War II. First, you have Kimball Arms, and I think we mentioned this in the one of the firearms flops episodes, either the third or fourth episode. And this was a delayed blowback 30 carbine pistol. He was trying to use a grooved chamber. Wasn't the same system as in the Daytonix Pocket 9, but it was kind of the same concept that the cartridge case would expand into the grooves, and then the friction would then slow the opening of the bolt or the slide. And actually, in some ways, it's almost kind of sort of a short recoil, even though it's not locked, because you see the little piston underneath the barrel. That's the barrel itself actually has a spring as well. And so I think he was kind of hoping that with the expansion of the case into the grooves in the barrel, that it would drag the mass of the barrel briefly before breaking free. And with systems like that, you're dependent on the brass. If you have brass that's too soft, it expands and then it doesn't want to open, or it tears apart. Brass is too hard or too thick, it doesn't expand enough, you don't get enough friction, and you start breaking things. Next attempt is around 1957, a fellow by the name of Fred Stevens. And Stevens is not a well-remembered person, even though you'll probably recognize several of his designs, whether it's the high standard 22 Magnum Derringer, the Cop 357, the little 4-shot Derringer.
Not particularly little, but yeah.
No, that's true. He also did a modern version of the high standard 22, but he actually scaled it up to 38. And I think American Derringer makes versions of all of those designs now. But in 57, he came up with a gas-operated tilting breech and double action 357 Magnum semi-auto pistol. And I've got the patents linked there in the show notes. There's also an interview by Charlie Petty in American Handgunner back in '83. Petty was working on a book on high standard, and so he was interviewing a lot of the former employees and former designers. And so got interviews with folks like Fred Stevens and Bob Hilberg, whose name's going to come up later. And so it's fun reading. It's kind of a modern looking pistol for 1957. But then again, you still have the revolver bias of the era. You know, for decades, even into the 80s, you still had folks going, "Whoa, you know, revolver is going to be more reliable than any semi-auto pistol." And so you had
Those
that.
damn revolvers.
Yeah, those damn automatic pistols, they always jam. You know? But you know,
I mean, I gotta say, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this show is that's also one of the reasons why I like revolvers so much, is because, yeah, when you try to make something as powerful as, I mean, we just talked about 454 Casull, where, yeah, you could get like, you know, Ruger Alaskan is a big honking gun, but it's still a semi-practical size, but a lot, like anything in that power level for a semi-automatic suddenly starts getting really weird really fast. And so this is a show of the freaks.
Pretty much, yeah. And again, there's probably a lesson to be learned here by future inventors that unless we suddenly evolve into having hands the size of orangutans, Magnum autoloading pistols are, you know, probably a bit too much for the market to bear. 1959 brings us the North American Arms Company Brigadier. And that's a short recoil. It's got a Browning high power style tilting barrel. And again, they made it double action. And this was chambered for, it was almost a twin of what would later become the 45 Winchester Magnum. It's really not the same cartridge, but it's awful close.
I remember seeing one of these in that book I first got when I was a kid, Ian Hogg, Encyclopedia of Firearms. And thinking this thing, I was like, it just looks like a normal pistol, but the way he described it, it was crazy.
Yeah, it's a 230 grain bullet at like 1,600 feet per second. There was only one pistol built. They proposed a carbine conversion called the Borealis that was going to have like a 20-shot magazine. I mean, they're basically going to use the same frame, same slide, I think put a different barrel in it, and sort of a forerunner of like the modern Ronnie system. The other neat thing about the Brigadier is it's actually one of the first chassis frame pistols. You basically, if you remove the slide stop and a pin at the back of the frame, you lift the steel rails and the entire trigger work out of the frame. That's how they got away with using an aluminum frame with essentially a 45 Win Mag pistol. But again, with only one pistol built, though I think the only reason it was remembered is the fact that they went on a big press blitz in December of '59, trying to bring in Canadian Forces generals and members of the press to show off the pistol. And evidently the military attaches looked at it and went, no. And with that, the investors all kind of went, there's really no market for this. And not surprisingly, NACO went bankrupt 3 months after they first displayed the pistol. Next attempt is, of course, the famous Automag, Harry Sanford and Max Guerra. Now, what would become the 44 Automag cartridge, which basically is a chopped down 30-06 case down to roughly 44 Magnum length. You can see wildcats like that going all the way back to pre-World War II. There was a gunsmith by the name of Pop Emer, who was notorious for chopping down rifle cartridges to try to turn them into revolver cartridges. He did this with the 30-06. He did this with the 401 Winchester self-loading, sort of a future 41 Magnum of sorts. But at any rate, the idea kind of continued on. Even like the first issue of Guns and Ammo back in 1958 showed a prototype of what looks like the modern 44 AMP, the automatic pistol cartridge. And there's a lot of controversy over how much Harry Sanford actually had to do with the initial design versus Max Guerra. But evidently the first single shot prototype proving the recoil action was in 68. They actually got it to feed from a magazine around 69, and then they started showing it off to gun magazines. It showed up in Guns and Ammo like in March of 1970. And so with the press interest, then you had public interest in people wanting to buy the new pistol. And the Automag Corporation was founded in 1970. Unfortunately, there was Max Guerra in particular complains that once investors came in, they were all trying to throw in their own ideas of how the pistol should be made and how it should work. And he complains that basically Harry Sanford would listen to everybody but him, which is not a good idea for trying to make something work. But they do eventually kind of flip into production after issues with their subcontractors, and that's another thing for a lot of companies to understand. You're going to live or die by the people you subcontract with. You start making promises as to deliveries, and then your contractors let you down. It drags out the whole process, and eventually people are going to get sick of you and start demanding refunds. And part of the problem with the early Pasadena automags was they were essentially selling them for a lot less than what it cost them to make. And that's not a recipe for success. Harry Sanford had the idea that, well, if I can generate a bunch of orders, then I'll generate interest from investors. Well, the investors start looking at the books and they start saying that you're making these pistols for more than what you're actually selling them for. They start slamming their checkbooks closed and running the opposite direction. And so by 72, the Automatic Corporation goes bankrupt. And they get bought by the Thomas Oil Company, and they form a new company called Trust Deed Estates. And that's kind of the glory days of the Automag, particularly around 74 or so. That's when you have people like Lee Juris, the founder of Supervel, come in as a distributor. Kent Lamont, who's a gunsmith and a big bore nut in his own right, comes in and starts doing custom builds. Don Mitchell, then the vice president of High Standard, comes in and he wants to sell Automag pistols under the High Standard label. And things kind of go well there for a few years. But again, you still have the issue of dealing with distributors, I mean, not distributors, but dealing with subcontractors, trying to tweak and improve the weakness in the original design. And at some point, Harry Sanford gets some friends together, some potential investors together to buy out, or at least buy back into the company. And that's when you see Ordnance Manufacturing Corporation formed, which is better known as OMC. The first 380 backup was made under the OMC label. And not long after that, then it turns into Arcadia Machine and Tool, what we now know as AMT. Now, while AMT planned to get the Automag back in production, really for the most part, they were just assembling leftover parts from the earlier runs. And I think more than anything, they're trying to depend on their other production line items, like, again, the OMC backup, the hardballer, long slide, etc. And for the most part, production, even the reassembly of the spare parts, is ended by about 81. But then you have the Dirty Harry film, Sudden Impact. And you, it's like, now we have a huge demand for a pistol that we no longer make. And they end up assembling a few more from the spare parts. But other than that, they don't really have anything to show for it. Around 88 or so, there's a couple more name changes. Irwindale Arms. It almost seems like they're changing names to kind of stay out of trouble with creditors. They're bouncing back and forth. That's when you see the new series of automatics, the Automatic 2 and 22 Magnum, Automatic 3 and 30 carbine, and 9mm Win Mag, Automatic 4, and 10mm Magnum and 45 Win Mag.
Is that when you see the, what was it, like the stainless steel 1911 that was in 22 Win Mag? And they
it's not a 1911. It's
well, it looks like one.
Kind of, sort of, not really, but it has, it's a delayed blowback that basically feeds some gas back from in front of the chamber back into the chamber to kind of try to lock the case in place.
Is it similar to the PMR system?
Yeah, actually, I think the PMR system is based on it.
Oh, okay.
I know somebody actually used the AMT chamber drawing, or the IAI chamber drawing, in their patent, which you kind of makes you wonder how they actually patented the thing when someone else did it back in 87, 88 or so. And so again, company bounces around several times. Comes AMT again around 92, 93. Galena Industries buys them out in around 96, and they go to about 2002 before they crater. Ironically, the modern high standard, which really isn't related to the previous high standard, they kind of bought the name and some of the remaindered parts. Bought Automatic afterwards, or not Automatic, but bought AMTs afterwards, and they currently produce the Automatic 2. Max Guerra tried to start up with some new production of the original Automatic, is the Automatic X. Of course, you also have the new production from XL Arms in South Carolina, which was showed off at SHOT Show, and they're using one of AMT's former people, Larry Grossman, who was actually the designer behind the new Automags, or the 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the 3, 4, and 5 are really, they're just kind of variations on a Browning lockup. The only thing they really have in common with the original Automag is kind of sort of the relationship of the hammer and its mainspring in the frame. But other than that, there's no comparison. Still with me so far?
Still with you.
Okay. Now, I'm kind of going to, with this next one, I'm going to get out of the oversized cartridge, but it's neat enough in its own right, and there's so very little written about it that I thought I would mention it. It's the Geffredo Gunsight J-Mag conversion, or what was later known as the Mach 2 conversion. And it's basically a conversion for a standard 1911 frame, but it turns it into a rotating barrel action. The first cartridge was the 45 J-Mag, which was actually just slightly longer in case length than the current 460 Rowland. And
okay.
Yeah, and so this was in the late 70s. I think the first mention I see of it is around 77. The last time I saw any reference to it was about 86. But
is there an advantage converting it over to a rotating barrel? Like I didn't necessarily know that as being a particularly stronger action than any other. I just saw it as a different action.
I think they were just hoping that the powerful cartridge would add enough torque to keep it locked up.
Okay.
Uh,
So actually going with the bullet traveling down the barrel, actually delaying the opening as well.
yeah. And the thing is, the Mach 2 conversion, at least the photos I've seen of it, had a huge, huge slide. And so you really think a lot of that's just the mass of the slide holding everything closed. But Gifredo had essentially a whole line by 86, 41, 9mm, 308, 257, and 556, all based off the original JMag, 45 JMag case. And you can kind of make comparisons to modern stuff like the 40 Super or the 464 Roland, which never came to be. That was basically Roland's version of the 40 Super. And there was also the 38 Gasul, which was a hyped up version of.
Wasn't that the bottleneck one?
Yeah, that was bottlenecked. Yeah, these all but the original 45 JMag were bottlenecked. But I really think that kind of deserves to have its own episode as sort of the calibers of the 1911, or at least the lesser known calibers of the 1911. Stuff like the 451 Daytonics Magnum, 45 Super, 450 SMC, which, while it officially stands for short magnum cartridge, there's actually a very colorful version of that abbreviation or acronym. But at any rate, so the next one on the list is, of course, my friend Wildy, as Charles Bronson would put it. And
Wild Wildy's coming.
yeah.
Does actually I've never seen any of the original Death Wish movies. Does he say I can't watch them all, man.
You don't have to watch them all. Just watch 1 and 3.
Okay, I'll get there.
4 and 2 are depressing.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't 2 actually have Lawrence Fishburne in it?
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne tries to hold a boombox up in front of him, and he hits him with a 380 85 Cheetah, I believe, and drops him back against a fence post.
But does he say Wildy or Wildy?
He said Wildy, I believe.
Okay, because that's I know that. I mean, I know there's what is it 224 Wildy? What's the AR cartridge?
Oh, Wild.
Yeah. I don't know.
WYLDE.
Yeah, I don't know if that's Wild or Wildy or.
I think it's Wild, but
okay,
yeah,
I'm not sure.
He talks in the movie. He talks about Wildy's coming, and he keeps telling the neighbors, and it happens like a few days in a row, and then finally, like, this package shows up, and he's like, Wildy's here, and he invites a few of them over and opens it up, and it's in this nice oak case with all the various cartridges, like in a little holder and everything else. It's very nicely set up.
Because of course you can get guns through the mail.
Yes, of course. And up until this point, I think he was carrying a Colt Cobra, so. I watched that movie too many times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he said Wildy, but it's Wildy.
Maybe Wildy. I've never actually heard
it is. I know that for a fact. It is Wildy because if you go on YouTube and start searching for Wildy pistols, you will actually find a done by, I forget what his first name is, but Mr. Wildy of.
No, that's his first name.
That's his first name.
Okay, but yeah, he introduces himself and it's pronounced Wildy.
I think people more often than not just call him Will, but at any rate, so this starts off around 1971. Wildy or Wilmore is working for the Swedish government. They're basically their munitions manufacturer, FFV, and at some point, FFV and Husqvarna had been developing gas-operated 9x19 pistols. For whatever reason, they thought that 9x19 required a gas operation. But he convinces them that they should really let him send some to the U.S. for American gun riders to examine. And evidently that created enough interest that FFV wasn't going to make anything commercial at the time, or at least they weren't going to make pistols for the commercial market. And I'm pretty sure Cooper made the comment that, you know, the action's wasted on a 9mm, but it'd be interesting if it was used on something more powerful, like the 44 Automag or such. And so Moore takes the design and he starts working on it and starts filing patents around 74. And people know about it at the time. You catch mention in Gun Digest that, you know, this pistol's coming, you know, it's being worked on. About 76 Moore forms the Wilde Firearms Company, and he contracts with Belmore Johnson Tool Company. Now, the importance of Belmore Johnson Tool Company is, that's where Fred Stevens, he worked for them. Also, Robert Hilberg worked for them, and actually Robert Hilberg holds patents on the Wilde pistol. So he did a lot of the design work. And before FFV, Moore had worked for a time during the 60s at Winchester, at least the ammunition branch of Winchester, as a sales rep. And so he talks Winchester into developing 2 new cartridges for the pistol. And you start seeing rumors of that come around 1977, the 45 Winchester Magnum and the 9mm Winchester Magnum. And this eventually kind of becomes an embarrassment for Winchester. They made all these cartridges, and there's absolutely no pistol that goes along with them. Moore tries to set up his own production around 78, only really starts churning out pistols around 82, after all these years of hype of the pistol being vaporware. And because of this, his investors turn on him and put the company into bankruptcy, form their own new company, IFD, and they move all the production company to New York. Well, at the time, Moore had some potential investors for the company. They were principals in the Circus casino in Las Vegas. And while they wanted to invest in it when Moore was involved, they didn't want to invest in the new company IFD. So they start their own company, BPM joint venture, the initials of everyone involved. And so since he lost his rights to the original design, he comes up with a new design called the Revelation, which instead of a rotating bolt, it was going to use a tipping bolt, kind of like an FAL. Well, IFD goes after the 2 new partners because they never came through with the investment in IFD. They're kind of the argument, well, we didn't want to invest in IFD. We didn't want to invest in the original Wilde company that you killed. And so in order to keep from dragging Moore down, Pennington and Moore dissolved BPM and move their own way, at least until the lawsuits would be over. Well, around 85, Moore somehow is contacted by Cannon Productions, and they wanted to get some Wilde 45 Win Mag pistols so they could use it props in Death Wish 3. Well, since IFD currently owned the rights to the pistol in that chambering, Moore proposes a new Wildcat, which he was going to call the 475 Wilde Magnum. And so it shows up in the film, as we discussed earlier. That was literally the first pistol essentially made for that cartridge. The first time the pistol was fired in that cartridge was with blanks. Around 87, Pennington, Moore, and Investors come back and they help Moore buy out IFD. So he gets rights back to the original pistol design, which he now calls the Survivor. And there's still some spinning of wheels. Around 89, another investor comes in, gets him a public offering, and so that that raises enough funds so they can start a new production facility. Well, that lasts till about somewhere in the mid 90s, and that falls apart again. And Bob Serva comes in around 96 and purchases the company, forming a new company, Wildy FA Incorporated. And that lasted approximately till 2011. 2015, new company comes around, USA Firearms Corporation, and they buy the rights. And supposedly production's begun again, although, again, given the history of the pistol, you don't really expect it to succeed. The wild thing with the pistol, most people don't realize that with the 9mm Winchester Magnum, it was designed as a double stack. So the entire pistol frame was meant to be a double stack, double action pistol. And that gave them enough room for the eventual Wildcat 475 Wildy. And more effectively built a whole family of Wildcats off of that. He went as low as 30 caliber. He did a 357, a 41, a 44, and eventually a 45 neck down version of the 475. I list some of the ballistics there in the notes. They look awfully specific for what you might actually expect from a pistol. I'm guessing that was individual chrono results.
I love the 357 Peterbilt.
Yeah, that was named after one of the employees at the time, Peter Helinski. That's... You have to wonder, most of the bullets probably were not designed to be launched at those velocities, like
125 grains at 2,370 feet per second.
Yeah.
Oh my God. 158 at 2123.
Yeah. Yeah. Of all of those, I think the only one that wasn't made at one point was the 30. It was, and that's screaming too.
110 at 2315.
Yeah. I think all those velocities are like out of a 10-inch barrel.
The 475 though, 300 grain at 1533.
Yeah.
That's screaming too for a heavy bullet like that. Out of a pistol.
Yeah, and of course the thing with automatic pistols is you're going to lose the brass.
Right.
And so, yeah, you basically have custom one-off brass that you're risk throwing away every shot. Thing with the Wildies is they really seem to be quite sensitive to the gas setting.
Yeah, don't you have that little dial thing at the front of the...
There's a big collar in the front, that you can turn around.
Yeah, and so it's like too little, the gun doesn't cycle too much, and the gun breaks itself. Have you seen Ian's video where he tries to shoot the pin gun version?
Yeah, that Wildy Survivor that he said it was a 45 Win Mag or 40 or what was that one?
Yeah, I think it was a 45 Win Mag. That was the pin gun version with the comp on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, does he ever get it to shoot more than twice?
I don't even think he got to shoot more than once.
Yeah. People are going, just throw it. But yeah, it's, again, you live and die by your investors. You live and die by your subcontractors. And
I just realized with that adjustable gas system too, I mean, that requires you to incrementally dial up the gas as you would ideally do. Like, cause I mean, I have an FAL, and to tune the gas system of your FAL, you take the ammo that you're running the FAL with, you load a few up in the mag, and you dial the gas way down so that the gun is undergassed, and you try to get it until the gun essentially if you can get a stovepipe, you're getting close, because you want it to just barely cycle, and then turn it up maybe just a few notches more to make sure. But dumping through that much ammo, and again also risking a stovepipe for this expensive brass. Ugh.
Yeah, the 475 and all of its Wildcat, or all of its neck down versions, basically 284 Winchester brass, chopped down to like 30 millimeter long. And so Yeah, I think Norma produced some of the brass starting around 91. Starline, I think, made some. But yeah, that's pretty good investment right there. It's definitely not something that you're going to necessarily shoot high volumes.
Unless you're Charles Bronson.
Oh yeah, unless you're Charles Bronson. But then again, he was shooting blanks. The next one is pretty much forgotten prototype of the Magmatic from John Power of Michigan. And this was a gas-operated single-action pistol. Kind of looked like a Colt Woodsman on steroids. It's quite elegant compared to even the Automag, and certainly far more elegant than the Wildy and the Desert Eagle. And some suggest that it was kind of the basis for the Desert Eagle, though I kind of have my doubts on that. One of the ways he actually made it small was by running the recoil spring under the grip. It's actually a leaf spring. And if you look at the pictures online, you can find at least one of the articles written on it by J.D. Jones, I believe, online. You can see the leaf spring just engaged on the forward part of the slide. And again, it's an abbreviated slide like a Woodsman. But you could change out the barrels quite easily. They were primarily as chambered in 44 Magnum, but I think he made a 45 Colt barrel as well. And he'd actually show up at the Second Chance bowling pin shoot. And that's how he met people like J.D. Jones, who was the hunting editor for American Handgunner. He was also very much into metallic silhouette shooting at the time. I think there was another article by Al Pickles.
Oh, that thing is cool.
Isn't it, though?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
it really does look like an oversized. It looks like an oversized Woodsman or a Buckmark, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
And it's got the fixed barrel, and it looks like it's got a rotating bolt.
Wow.
On the system, but it's only really the back half of the slide, so it's kind of like
you're never gonna get a stovepipe with that.
No. Well, I don't know. I mean,
maybe
I've gotten plenty of stovepipes with a Desert Eagle, but it's not quite as wide open as that. But yeah, it's almost like a Maxim 9. The slide looks like to me.
That thing looks huge, though.
Oh, it's big. Go on Google image search for Magmatic pistol, and you actually see a American Rifleman ad for it, or it might be an article.
It was an article, yeah.
And you see someone shooting it off of a shooting mat, and
that's what I'm looking at.
It is a honking gun.
Oh man, that's cool.
He's got the old like 70s shooting glove, leather shooting glove.
Well, the next one we've got here is the Kunin, which you first get announced about 1980. And we discussed this a couple of weeks ago in the 1911 Extravaganza episode. Various versions, the original Model A, which is a traditional Browning swinging link. Model B goes linkless. You have like the Cadet, the Compact, the Classic. Besides 357 Magnum, at one point, around 98, they teased a 41 Magnum, and I don't think most people realized it was actually a rimless Wildcat version of the 41 Magnum, so they wouldn't have to change the breech face. It was kind of a neat idea, but unfortunately, that's around the time one of their bankruptcies, and there's a long history of that as well. But the Kunin is kind of a elegant Magnum pistol in its own right if you like 1911s. It's not that huge.
No, it's this and the Wildy are both guns that actually fit kind of nicely in the hand.
Well, the Wildy has a nice grip. Everything else is huge.
Yeah.
Well, the Wildy would actually be thinner if it wasn't double action.
It's double action? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what he thought, again, a lot of the early designs were double action, and I don't really know what they were thinking, other than the fact that, like, oh, it'll be like a revolver. Like, well, yeah, if you have hands like an orangutan, you might actually be able to pull the trigger. But so around the same time, you have development of the Grizzly Win Mag, and that North American manufacturing was going to play with it for a while, and eventually, I think they realized they weren't going to be able to make it, and so they sent the inventor Perry Arnett to LAR. And you have several versions of this. The Mark One, while it was chambered in 45 Win Mag, and it's really one of the first commonly available pistols for 45 Win Mag. It's essentially a scaled up 1911, much larger all around than the Kunin. But the trick thing with the Grizzly was all of the conversion kits you could get for it. At one time, they were like offering conversion kits for 30 Mauser and 9mm and all sorts of cartridges that were grossly undersized for the pistol. But you could get it. It's more practical. Would have been like the 9mm Win Mag, 357 Magnum. At one point, he had a Wildcat, the 357 45 Grizzly Magnum, which was the 45 Win Mag neck down to 357.
I mean, as impractical as it may be, I kind of like the sound of a 1911 chambered in 30 Mauser. I don't know.
Well, that could be done, I think.
I guess I'm just too hipster.
I would imagine actually the geometry would be pretty easy because it's bottlenecked. So
it's just kind of cool. I mean,
you could actually fit them in a conventional frame, but it's only the way they tilted the mag. You can only really load around 5 rounds and have it work.
I mean, I know that it has no purpose, but I don't know. I'm just weird. Maybe I'm the only one who likes weird, like oddball cartridges in normal guns. We have to do that. We have to do that episode sometime. Talk about like the guns that they make in Italy and Mexico.
Oh yeah,
because they can't use military cartridges. That'll be.
But like I said, we could do a calibers of the 1911 episode with like.
There we go.
Yeah, it's like all the obscure things that people have tried to stick in a 1911 frame.
You do realize, Daniel, that every time you come on the show, you come up with an idea for another episode that forces you to come on the show again.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Hercules slaying the Hydra.
And we love it.
Oh, yeah. Because it also means that's another 15 pages of show notes that we get to read.
Oh, my God. I'm going to compile all of these into a book. Isn't there some publishing company on Amazon you can send these to?
I mean, people are doing like Wikipedia collections on Amazon, so
perfect.
Yeah. Of course, besides the original Mark I, there's a fixed sight Mark II. They eventually came out with a 44 Magnum version, the Mark IV, and once the 50 Action Express came out, they came out with the Mark V. One of the things that killed LAR's production was they were caught up in the anti-gun lawsuits of the late 90s, around 98, 99. And they finally decided it wasn't worth it to try to find someone that would insure them while making handguns. I know there was a Mark IV used in a rather infamous murder in my current town. This restaurant near one of the major colleges, and somebody came in and killed a waitress and like a cook. And for a while, they thought it was a Desert Eagle because they couldn't think of anything in 44 Magnum that was a semi-auto. And oddly enough, it turned out to be a Grizzly Mark IV, which obviously made it very easy to trace. There's only so many Mark IVs in existence. Besides the Grizzly Win Mag, Perry Arnett also played with a Browning high power that he reworked for 9mm Win Mag. Basically the same concept, just stretched out the frame, stretched out the slide, And evidently it worked. Unfortunately, somebody stole it.
Ugh.
And when you say stretch out the frame, are they like cutting the frame and welding it with like a piece in between or something?
Well, with the frame, you could actually do that on a high power. I know what some people have done, particularly John Martz, the next person on the list, is they'll take two standard guns and then they'll offset the cuts. So you'll have like a narrow portion of the rear and a narrow portion of the front from the two separate cuts. And then you'll have two wide sections. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
On one gun, they bias it towards the rear. On the other gun, they bias it towards the front. And that way you have two long sections and two short sections that you can then weld together.
That's just crazy to me how they came up with that to figure out how to do it. These custom guns, I mean, like the next one you're talking about, custom Luger in 357 Magnum.
That seems a little scary. I don't know.
That's crazy.
Was the Luger action tough enough to handle that?
Well, the basic action's been scaled up to rifle and even cannon.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, you got the what was that? The Pedersen rifle?
No, the Pedersen wasn't. Yeah, the Pedersen 276 was.
Yeah.
No, there was some Swiss machine guns in 7.5 Swiss. There's also some autocannon.
I mean, to people who do this stuff and to people who do welding and machining and everything, I'm sure this sounds just like, oh, yeah, whatever, I could do that. But to someone like me who, the best thing I've ever probably made is a guitar out of wood and nothing ever out of metal, it just sounds incredible to be able to just like cut two frames down, weld them together and get them perfectly aligned so they work just right. And it's insane. Well,
I'd say a lot of it comes down to basically your fixturing skill and your welding skill. Some of these gunsmiths, they basically started off as either they started off in your trades, your welding or your tool and die manufacturer, etc. And so, yeah, you live and die by your fixtures.
Right. So we have the elephant in the room, the Magnum Research Desert Eagle.
Yeah. The Deagle, or some of us would like to call it the Desert Beagle.
That's what everybody used to call it on Counter-Strike.
Yeah, that's Counter-Strike.
Oh, God.
Probably because they could get the licensing name for the original. They call them all weird names.
No, I used the dual Beretta 40s when I played.
Ugh.
I used to play a lot of Day of Defeat too. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
That's all right. Evidently, Magnum Research was formed around 79 with the goal of making a 357 Magnum autoloader. They had their first prototype around 81. They actually displayed it at SHOT Show 82, and man, that thing is ugly.
Yeah,
I linked to American Handgunner article from 82 in the show notes, and yeah,
is it as ugly as the one they're peddling today?
Uglier.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's crude, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can
never mind.
You can at least thank IMI for cleaning up the design.
Good Lord.
It's Magnum Research's design, but
it's like Taurus made a Desert Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's so weird.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're getting to that later. So, at least in the times I give in the show notes, those are kind of like approximate times because oftentimes they would announce a chambering, but it would be vaporware for a year or more. Most people don't remember the 41 Magnum version. Gun World actually showed the 357-44 Bain and Davis prototype. I want to say around 1990. They had an article on that, that's pretty neat in its own right. Evidently, they couldn't make it work for whatever reason. There's the famous 50 Action Express, the 440 Corbon, which again, that's kind of a forgotten cartridge. It's the 50 Action Express neck down for 44 Magnum projectiles. I guess it'd be handy if you were in a jurisdiction that didn't allow 50 caliber.
This next one I've been itching to
I
ask you about.
I wish I could find the shooting times issue where it appears in. I want to say it's around 89 or 90.
If you would have ever asked me, hey, what's a gun that you think Taurus would have made that you've never heard of, and I would have never come up with this.
Yeah, they rewelded a PT92 or PT99 so they could make it a 357 Magnum.
How many people were killed in the development of this gun?
Yeah, I have so many questions, and there's probably not any answers.
And you can see I want to say they actually silver soldered the slide, which that would work where they did it. But
testing was conducted outside of the United States.
Most likely. The same issue actually shows it next to a prototype 10 millimeter version of the PT92.
I don't know. 10 millimeter I can see. 357 Magnum? Holy hell.
Yeah, and basically they used the standard frame. It wasn't a single stack frame. So you imagine trying to reach the double action trigger on that.
Good Lord.
Yeah, needless to say, that never came to market.
I mean, that would have been cool as hell.
Yeah, I wish I could remember which issue it appeared in.
Can you imagine Riggs carrying a 92 and 357 Magnum? That'd be awesome.
Depends on how it looks. I guarantee it looks at least as bad as that first generation Desert Eagle.
No, it looked fairly normal, other than the fact that the grip is extra big. Of course, that's probably why they didn't make it. Probably didn't last very long. But evidently they tried.
Man.
That was really in the era. Taurus was actually kind of scaring Smith & Wesson back then.
Really?
Well,
no one would ever know. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of the high capacity revolvers that Smith & Wesson makes were directly influenced by Taurus.
Because they were fitting that many 357s in a semi-auto?
No, I mean, as far as revolvers, like their 8-shot 357.
Was Taurus doing that before Smith?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they first did like the 607, which was a 7-shot off of their 44 Magnum frame, and then they came out with a 608, which was an 8-shot. And I'm pretty sure that was before Smith & Wesson came out with the 627 Plus.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Learn something every day.
Yeah. So, I mean, Taurus was kind of taking over the revolver market, or at least what was left of the revolver market there in the late 80s, early 90s. And
now, this last one you have here, the 10 millimeter DeVal Magnum.
I've never actually seen the prototype of this. I heard about it in the book Bryn 10, The Heir Apparent, which actually that would also be a very good future episode when Chuck Warner finally gets his CSP pistol ready. But at any rate,
wasn't Charlie Kelsey the same guy who had something to do with the 40 G&A, or was that someone different?
Charlie Kelsey had several things. We mentioned it before in the custom pistol episode. For doing like compact Smith & Wesson 39s and 59s. One of the first people to do 38 super comp guns for IPSC. He did some very high-tech looking pistols back in the early 80s, well, late 70s, early 80s. And then he fell off the map. And I mean, Kelsey's a tragic figure. I mean, people basically say he was very talented and had very good ideas, but he could never get things to market. He always wanted to keep tweaking it. He could just never get stuff production ready. And things like the Chip McCormick 8-round 45 magazine, that's actually Kelsey's patent. That was originally sold by Devil. other things like the current interceptor bullet, all the weird little Phillips head projectile designs that everyone seems to be coming out with nowadays. Well, Charlie Kelsey patented those back in like the 90s, but no one was interested back when he had the patent on it. Now, Kelsey did play with like a chopped 41 Magnum case. That was going to, I think, be the original 10 millimeter Davo. Once he also had been courted to produce essentially Whitcollins centimeter cartridge, which was the direct forerunner of the 40 Smith & Wesson. But I think that was around the time that Davo went out of business back in the mid 80s. But the other person that's involved in this patent, George Reynolds, he's better known today for the Armalite AR-50 rifle and the AR-30. He also did some single shot and semi-auto 30 millimeter grenade launchers for the Army back in the 70s. And I mean, these weren't standalones. These were attached to rifles. So, yeah, I mean, George Reynolds done some neat stuff. But I don't know whatever happened to the prototype. Never seen pictures of it. But evidently this was essentially a rimless 41 Magnum case.
It's really incredible. All the stuff here. I mean, before we wrap up, all the stuff that you have listed here, a lot of them have their own cartridges. It's just incredible to me that people can think up, okay, well, I'm gonna make this cartridge and I'm gonna design the gun to kind of be like that. Sometimes they used existing basic designs and expanded upon them. Other times, like with Wildy, they came up with basically their whole thing. Or that the Magmatic there. That thing still blows me away. I really want one of those.
John Power has shown up on some online forums. I think it's on Lee Martin's singleactions.com forum.
That would be fun to get him on the show.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to come talk with us for an hour?
Well, maybe Moss knows how to contact him. I don't know.
But that I mean, it's just crazy looking at that thing. And I'll have to. I'm kind of debating whether or not to use that for the show notes picture.
Might as well, since we're calling it the Magmatic episode.
Yeah, it's a really interesting design. I'd love to see it in person. If it still exists. Didn't he only make a few, you said?
Yeah. Well, he probably still has them unless he, liquidated his collection.
Right. Weird. Anything else you want to ask before we wrap up?
No, I mean, that's about as extensive as we could get.
It was fantastic.
I was thinking, we could talk a little bit about 10 millimeter in there. That's kind of it's one of those I'm looking like, there's no need to fit 10 millimeter in there. 10 millimeter is just a mundane, high-powered automatic cartridge.
Oh, well, Daniel, thank you again. This was fantastic. So with that, we'll head into the wrap-up section and close out the show. Don't forget to shop Brownells using our affiliate link. Head to firearmsradio.tv and click the affiliate link in the upper right-hand corner. Be sure to go like Handgun Radio on Facebook and share it with your friends, and leave us a review on iTunes. Listen to all the great shows on the Firearms Radio Network, and be sure to check out the Firearms Radio Network on YouTube. And also try to join the Handgun Radio discussion group. We have a lot of great posts over there, and Daniel shares incredible links and everything else over there. So thank you again, Daniel, for that.
Quite welcome. Thank you for giving me an outlet for my obsessions.
So, Daniel, thank you again for coming on the show. As always, the show notes are absolutely incredible. Like I said, I need to get on Amazon and try to just get these published. Handgun Radio Show Notes, Volume 1.
There you go.
But where can people find you? Where can people read your articles and any other places that you can be accessed?
Well, right now, my articles are hosted over at looseruns.com. You can also find me at my Facebook page, 556 Timeline, which is my primary article. But I'm pretty easy to find. You can always look me up at the Handgun Radio discussion group. It's rare that a day doesn't go by that I don't share something there. So,
and I learn something every day because of it.
Yeah, sometimes I worry that I'm just flooding.
Nope. Negative, Ghost Rider.
And Weird, where can people find you?
You can find me at my blog, which is weirdworld.com. And you can also listen to me on my podcast, which is Assorted Calibers. That's assortedcalibers.com. And we also have a Facebook page. Please join it.
Do not miss an episode. It is fantastic. So thank you again for coming on, both of you. Thank you for all the information. I need to go back and listen to this again after it posts. So because I want to keep learning. And
you'll need to listen to it again anyway to take out all the swears. And now we will.
So until next week, have fun and safe shooting.